There are so many exciting things that we're going to build in this course. We thought it might be a great idea to give you a quick tour of some of the things that you can expect. Let's think about scheduling employees for a moment here. Let's look at January, and we can see we're calculating the number of available days within the month. We want to think about how we can schedule our workforce. So let's look at some of the alerts that we're going to program into this model. Let's suppose here we left this cell blank. It would instantly alert us with this orange color to tell us that that's not appropriate. Let's just undo that quickly. Now, the other thing a user might do by accident is put a negative number into here like this. That would also trigger an alert. Now, we could undo that and maybe look at a more common issue. And overscheduling people, for instance, 32 days in this case, would trigger a number of alerts, and it would draw our attention down below here where we've got a scheduling issue. The interesting thing about the scheduling issue translates and propagates all the way through to here on the cover page, so we can know as soon as we open the model that there's an issue in that place. Now, before we forget, let's pop back into this cell and put it back to the way it was. Now, the other thing that we're going to look at in this course, which will be really helpful for you, is we're going to look at how to install these nice little arrows like this to show you when a salary has increased from one level up to another level. So why exactly is this important? Well, without this, we might just look at this table of numbers, not really being able to easily see when there's changes to these salary levels, but instantly our eyes get drawn to these places here and these ones down below where we can see the change. And all of this is automated. So if we were going to look here at the senior associate and we were contemplating a decrease to the salary out here as an example, we could quickly put in that lower salary level and input it, and we get an arrow for when that lower salary level or that drop occurs. We're also going to be showing you down in this row here how to get an accurate count of all of these employees and only be counting the ones that are actually scheduled to work in any given month. Then we'll jump ahead to this next schedule in the model where we want to look at some totals for the employees, in particular the benefits load. And all of these are dynamically connected into the model so we can instantly put in changes and see them happen right away. Down in this next section here, we have labels which are linked live into the model. So when we roll it forward, the labels will change. Further down below, we have control over the bonus for the first year, and then the second year we're forecasting as well. Jumping ahead now to the employee payables schedule, you're going to see more examples of live linked labels in here, but inside these cells, we're using something called data validation. It allows us to quickly access a list, and as we make changes, you can see the bonus payments happening in different months automatically. A little further down below, you're going to see another example here of a corkscrew. Allows us to track information from one period to the next, and the next. Very common in financial modeling. And now the previous schedules that we looked at were allowing us to look at the employee costs that get accrued and sent over to the income statement in order for us to get a meaningful measure of the company's profit as a health check. Now, speaking of health checks, down here, we're performing a completely different check of health. We're looking at everything down here from a cash perspective. So all the employee costs, what are they doing to the company's cash flow? And in fact, this line will go directly to the cash flow statement, which we will put together in a subsequent FP&A modeling course. So hopefully you've enjoyed this quick tour of the model, or at least the parts that we're going to complete in this particular FP&A course. We've got lots of exciting stuff to do, so let's get started. We'll see you soon in the next video. Now, in the previous course, we looked at forecasting for all the revenue amounts for this particular model. And in this course, we're going to focus on headcount. We're bringing up a graphic of the course right now. By headcount, we're talking about all of the employees that are within this management consulting corporation and how we're going to accurately forecast them and their associated costs. So let's quickly just jump up above to the previous schedules that were completed in the revenue forecasting course. The reason that we're highlighting this is that some of you may have just come into this course and may not have done the previous course. There were some really interesting learnings in that course, especially related to formatting, that may be worth checking out. Now, in particular in that course, we went through all of the formatting involved with these headings, and the dates in particular were somewhat tricky, and we needed to make sure that they would allow us to aggregate these results into quarters and years in later parts of the model. Now, we're also highlighting this section of the model down below right here, where you see these check boxes, but actually beneath the surface, these are simply ones and zeros, and often referred to as binary switches in financial modeling. And you can see another example down here where it appears as though they're checkboxes, but again, these are binary switches. So these switches not only look great, but they also function very well also. By multiplying through by binary switches, we can keep the formulas in the financial model really, really simple. Now, the other thing that we went through in detail in that first FP&A course was down here. And we went through exactly how we get these really nice looking formats for our numbers and how you can accurately control positive numbers, negative numbers, zero, and text entries. And lastly, the other thing worth checking out in that previous FP&A course is information on how to access the community of other members here at CFI. We also went through pretty detailed instructions about using the keyboard and how that can significantly boost your efficiency. And we went through a very detailed discussion about how this particular model was designed. So just in case you didn't see that last course, we wanted to highlight these things really quickly so you'd be aware of what was in it and what you might be missing. So next up, let's jump down to the employee schedule, where we're going to roll up our sleeves and get busy on learning how to design and fill out that schedule. We'll see you there. So welcome back. I hope you're ready to dive into this employee schedule and start powering through some formulas and making some progress here. Now, the first place we're going to start, as you might expect, is right up here with these headings. And one of the things that you're going to see very shortly, I promise, is that a lot of the hard work that we put into the headings earlier is going to be able to be leveraged here so that we can put these in place very quickly at this moment. Now, let's just tap that page up button just once. And it pops us up here to revenue receivables. And we want to focus our attention right here to these headings for dates. Now, in the last course, we put a lot of effort into the formatting of these, but in particular, what matters to us most at this moment is if we look in the cell, we tap F2 right here, we can see we've already gone to the trouble of locking these cells properly. So this particular cell is locked into row 5, so the row of 5 will not change, but the columns, i.e. G, H, I, J, etc., are free to move from left to right. Now, if we pop into this next cell right here, we can see the same thing. This is locked to row 6, so row 6 will not change, and then the last one is locked to row 7. So these are perfectly locked down for us now and ready to copy. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually quite easy. Let's go up here, and from this corner, we want to hold down Control-Shift, right arrow, and then Control-Shift down. We've gone a little bit too far, so we want to go back upwards one row. So now what we do is we only hold down just the Shift key and use the up arrow to go back up. Now that we have that selected, we can do a copy, Control-C, and we can see it highlighted. We pop down with the page down button. Let's go right up here and just do a regular paste, Control-V. Now, one thing we always like to say here at CFI is it's always a great idea to check your work. Let's pop into this first cell, F2. We can see equals G $5, G $6, G $7. And we have that consistency all the way across from left to right. Now what we want to do is progress down here. And we can see if we put a few ones into these cells, we can see that they're formatted as checkboxes to show us either actuals or forecasts. Now, before we go up to the schedule above to do another copy and a paste, let's observe for a moment this particular row. Notice that there's a little bottom border underneath it. Well, if we tap the page up button and look closely at these checkboxes here, we can see there's a top border above them. So we certainly wouldn't want to copy and paste the formats down below. In fact, the valuable thing for us in this situation is actually inside the cell. If we tap F2, we can see equals G $8. That is the formula that we're interested in. So let's highlight across, Control-Shift right, do a regular copy, Control-C, hit the page down button, and let's go up here. Now, instead of Control-V, we're going to do Control-Alt-V, brings up a paste special. Or we could have used Alt-ES to also bring up this menu. Now we're just going to tap the down arrow to get to paste only the formulas and hit enter. Again, these cells look fine, but we like to be thorough and check our work. So let's go into the first one and tap F2. We can see the same formula equals G $8. So it looks like it worked perfectly. The other thing that we can notice is that if we look at these formats, they appear to be perfect, which is what we're after. Now, in order for us to get the checkboxes here and down below for base salary, it looks like we can actually do a standard copy paste because we're after the same formats and we definitely want those formulas as well. So this could be pretty quick and easy. From here, Control Shift right, copy with a Control C, down to this cell right here, just Control V, for a regular paste. Now the other shortcut that people often like here is an F4 to repeat the last command. So we could go down to this row and tap F4, which repeats the paste. So it's really your call on whether or not you'd want to use that F4 key and whether or not you think it actually saves time. For me, after I'd gone here and hit Control V, I already have my fingers on those keys. So it's just as easy, in fact, a little faster to just go down here and hit Control V again. So we're pretty excited about the next video. We're going to be going up into this section here, and you wouldn't know this by looking at the PDF, but we're going to be putting some interesting conditional formatting into these cells. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in a moment. So where we want to focus our attention next is right down here, the available days. And across this particular row, we want to get the actual number of days that are in each month. And as you can see here, we also want for February to be able to see 29 because it's a leap year. Now, the first step for us to understand this problem is to go up here. And we need to know exactly what date is inside that cell. So if we pop over into an adjacent cell here and just link over to it like this, we're going to be able to see the date. And now, how are we able to do that exactly? Well, if we hit Control 1 from this cell to format the cells, then we can use the Tab key to get over here, and we can clearly see we've set a date format to show us 3 M's for month, JAN, and then a D for day, which comes out as 31, and then right here, 2024. Now, why exactly did we need to check that? We could already see that the month was January and the year was clearly 2024, but what we needed was we needed to know the day. And now we can see it's the end of the month, which we're looking at right here. So what we really need to do now is we need to take January 31st, 2024 and subtract from it December 31st, 2023. So what we can do is progress down here to this particular cell, and we can start off by grabbing this date, which we know is January 31, 2024. We want to subtract off December 31st, 2023, but how to get it? Well, the trick here is to use that EO month formula again. We're going to subtract EO like this, and EO month stands for end of month, by the way. So we can tap the Tab key now. And the start date is going to be right up here. This will be our start date, but then how many months do we want to move? Normally we'd put in a 1 if we want to go forward by 1 month, but in this case, we'll put in a -1 to go backwards. Close the brackets and hit enter. So this EO month function in here has proven itself to be useful again. What we're always doing is we're taking the current end of month, our January 31st, and we're always subtracting away the end of month for the previous month. What we can do now is just a regular copy, hold it all the way across with the Shift key and the right arrow, and then Alt-ES for a paste special, down to formulas, and hit enter. Now, as you can see in the schedule or the table up above, most of these numbers are preloaded for you. We didn't want you doing a lot of meaningless data entry, but you'll see one row across here that has not yet been loaded, and that was by design. So we left this row blank to show you exactly how the schedule could be used in a practical situation. We're going to start with the assumption that this particular analyst will be working on a full-time basis. So we can go down to all the available days, copy them with a Control-C. Let's go to the row above and think about what we want to paste. We want to do paste special, Alt-ES, but we actually only want to put in the values. So let's go down to values and hit enter. So we have this analyst loaded in as if they were working on a full-time basis. However, this particular analyst has a start date which begins in September. So what we want to do is actually zero out these first few entries that we're highlighting right now. So what we can do now, since we've selected them in advance, we can hit 0 and then Control Enter, we'll put zeros into all those cells. So what may be evident from this discussion then is if you were rolling this model forward to a brand new fiscal year, you'd want to start this again. Copy these available days and probably paste them all the way across here as values. You'd have full-time as the general assumption, and then you could modify it depending on the employee schedules. So the next video should be pretty interesting. These cells that we're highlighting may look finished to you, but we're going to add in some conditional formatting here that's going to help to alert us if we should put any numbers that would be not allowed. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a moment. Now, as you can see, we're focusing our attention here into this part of the model again. And as we mentioned before, we want to be limiting the numbers that can be put into this area. For example, we definitely don't want any negative numbers getting put in by accident. We also wouldn't want in this cell a 32 being input because there's not 32 days available in January. And finally, in this range across here, we don't want any blanks because we're going to see in a few minutes down below, we're going to do an employee count. The count will not work if we have blank cells up in here. So we definitely want to place some limits in this area. So we've discussed the limits that we want to impose on what can be put in these cells, but actually, we're not going to put a physical constraint. What we're going to do instead is we're going to program an alert which will go off if the limits are broken. And we're going to do this by using conditional formatting. So anyone that was in our first course on FP&A revenue modeling would know that for conditional formatting, there's really two tricks. The first one is we want to make sure that we select the entire area that we want the conditional formatting to apply to first. Now with that area selected, let's drive up into the menu and select conditional formatting. So we tap the Alt key and we can see right up here, H for home. And now over here, we have an L for conditional formatting. We're going to go all the way down here where it says new rule, or we can tap N for new rule, and we get this dialog box that comes up. We're going to go down here to where it says use a formula to determine which cells to format, and then hit the tab key and put the formula into this box. Now let's put in an equal sign here to get our formula started. Now we mentioned that we're going to want 3 rules for this conditional format. We want these rules to be OR logic. That way, if any of the rules is tripped, then the conditional formatting will apply. So let's now type in OR to get an OR function here and open the bracket. For the next step, what we want to do is actually start moving around like this, and we want to select this cell right up here, which is cell G81. The other trick with conditional formatting is to note that this cell is locked by default with $signs in front of the G and in front of the 81. In fact, we don't want it locked. We're going to tap the F4 key a couple of times, in fact, 3 times, to get that cell completely unlocked. We want that cell to travel through the entire area selected to perform the test on all of the cells. And now we want to select the greater than symbol and say it's greater than, and then what we want to do is select the available days down below, G89. Now for this cell, what we want for cell locking using the F4 key is that we want just the 89 reference locked just like that. Now we can put in a comma, and here's where we insert our second OR condition. So again, let's use the arrows and let's select the same cell up here, G81. And again, we want to use the F4 key to make sure it's unlocked. And we want to say that less than 0. This will detect for negative numbers. Now we're going to put in a comma. And for the last condition, we select the same cell, G81. Again, we need it unlocked. And we want to detect if it's equal to 2 double quotes means a blank. Now we can close the brackets like this. Now is a moment where we often reach for the mouse. We find it a little bit easier now over here when we go into this format. Let's click on this format button. We're going to define the format for the conditional formatting. So for the font, we'd like it to be bold. And let's pick a color here of white. Now let's go over here where it says fill, right up top there. And we're going to go down to more colors. And now here, custom. so that we can define a custom RGB code. We're going to put in 250, use the tab key, 98, tab 28. So 250, 98, 28 is a color that we use here at CFI. We can click OK to this, now OK here, and OK to this last button as well. Now remember, we want to make sure that we check our work. So let's just go into the first cell here where it says 31. Let's try putting in a 32, which should not be allowed. We can see the conditional formatting going off. We can undo that. Let's try a negative number, -8. That's also working really well. Undo that one. And also, if we delete it, so it's blank, the conditional formatting also gives us an alert. Another way that we can be sure or check the formula that we put in place is to highlight these cells, Alt-H-L for conditional formatting, and we're going to go up here or at the bottom where it says R for manage rules, and then the rule comes up. You could pause the video if you like, double check that you have the right formula in here. So the next video might be really interesting for you. For these salaries across here, we want to program them in such a way that it'll be very obvious to us when there's a change, either up or down in the salary level. We'll see you there to investigate how to do it.
Continue learning. Join CFI today.